So we've been speaking, as always, getting as much reaction as we can to this big historic moment for the United States. And we've been speaking to one political analyst who was saying to us in the next 4 years, it will not be an easy run for this new U.S. President-elect Joe Biden. He'll have to deal with most of the failures of the Trump administration. Some of them include the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. There's a high unemployment rate as well, worsened, of course, by COVID-19 and the subsequent lockdowns. Take a listen to Elizabeth Sidropoulos.
Very critically, I think the results of this election highlight a country divided. So yes, he has won the majority, both of the popular votes, as well as the Electoral College. There are still a number of states outstanding, and he might very well increase that 273 to closer to 300. But it is a very divided nation. If you look at the, 70 million people voted for Donald Trump. That's much more than he got in the previous election. I think his support base will be galvanized and mobilized by the claims of illegitimacy that have been made by him and people around him. And so it's going to be very difficult, a very difficult 4 years, but a critical 4 years for the U.S. internally. It's also about strengthening democratic institutions. And then globally, I think we'll see it is already a very different world. Not only because of Donald Trump, but I think Donald Trump has played a critical role in that. Specifically, what will be interesting to watch is how the relationship with China evolves under a Biden presidency.
We can now speak to Associate Professor in Public Law at the University of Cape Town, Richard Calland, joining us by Skype tonight. Professor, good evening. Good to have you with us on this, what is a historic broadcast, really. What do you make of the Biden victory in the United States?
Well, it is significant because Trump was such a rogue character and played such a disruptive role both in the United States political arena but also internationally. And if one looks at it just from that international perspective at the moment, I think there will be many presidents and prime ministers around the world, including, I suspect, President Ramaphosa, who are committed multilateralists, who are committed to the international rule of law and who will be very pleased that someone such as Biden, who I think is much more inclined towards multilateral engagement, has won this election. Let's take one example, the most important issue of our generation, arguably, climate change, the climate emergency. By pure coincidence, a poignant one, on Election Day this week in the United States, that was the day that the United States formally left the Paris Agreement, the agreement reached in 2015, to present collective action in the face of climate change. Biden will resume United States' place in the Paris Agreement. He's committed to doing that. I've no doubt he will do that. And that in itself is a huge and significant thing.
But just on the issue of the climate accord, for example, there were industries, the coal industry in the United States, the miners and the like, were very much in favor of the Trump administration coming out of that. That won Trump's support. How does Biden reverse such a change without becoming an unpopular president, especially for people who he needs to get on board in order for this presidency to be the best that it can be?
Well, he will have to craft, as many leaders around the world are having to craft, a just energy transition. He will have to find a way to navigate a tough political economy to get his country out of fossil fuels as quickly as possible. In one of the presidential debates, you'll recall, he made what at the time was regarded as a bit of a faux pas when he said that he was going to, in effect, make that transition quicker in terms of the oil industry. Well, it didn't cost him the election. That much is clear. He's won this election not just in terms of the Electoral College, convincingly, but in terms of the popular vote by more than 4 million as things stand. So I think he has a mandate. But the other important point to bear in mind is that it's, I think, pretty clear that Biden will be a one-term president. He's, given his age, and I think his own history in politics, I would be astonished if he was to run again. So the advantage of being a one-term president is that, yes, he must keep an eye on politics and the future for his party, the Democrats, but he doesn't have to worry about his own re-election. He can take one for the team, as it were. And I think energy and the energy transition is one area where I think he could play a historic role if he's bold enough.
You've got the energy issue, which is also very popular domestically, helped Trump, right? You've got Trump, who then tore up basically the Iran nuclear deal. You've got his previous run-ins with other former allies, or shall we say estranged allies in Europe. How hard is Biden going to have to work on those issues?
I don't think it'll be terribly difficult. I think he's going to be greeted with open, if not open arms, then certainly open doors. And I think it'll be relatively straightforward for him to rebuild international relations. I think that most countries, most multilateral institutions, the World Health Organization, the Paris Accord, the European Union, I hope the African Union, many of these will be pleased to have a partner that they can deal with on a reasonable and rational basis, and not the kind of temper tantrums and the kind of unreason, as I call it, an age of unreason that prevailed when Donald Trump was the president. I think that's clear. The other aspect, of course, which will ring bells for South Africans, is that Biden has to rebuild broken institutions of government in Washington, D.C. and in federal government that Trump has broken down. That will be easier than it has been for Ramaphosa for this reason, that it is an accepted practice in the United States that when a new president comes in, he has a very significant opportunity to clean house and to bring in new people. The transition period, the 76 days, which will start now and which will tick through to the inauguration around the 20th of January, is going to be even more critical than in previous years, because that transition team that will be appointed in the next day or two and begin work, no doubt, on Monday, if they haven't already, will be there to ensure that Trump doesn't vandalize the institutions anymore, that there is a smooth transition in terms of power. But of course, all the evidence is that Trump is clinging to power like a madman and doing probably everything he can to disrupt that process.
Professor Richard Calland, stand by for us as we continue to cover the breaking news tonight, Joe Biden being elected the next American president to be sworn in early January 2021. Much more analysis and reaction when we continue.